Hello friend, before starting the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like it. This may seem like a small step, but for us it is the key to success. Enjoy listening.
A migration story. When our roots were pulled from the soil, only a void remained in the ground. But that void never fills with earth. It becomes a hole we carry inside us. We were told that this was a small price for a new life, but no one told us how large that price would be. This is our story. But it is not only our story. It is the story of everyone who leaves their homeland, their past, their memories behind and heads toward the unknown. So we might possibly survive, so we might be able to live, so we might be able to fight. Yet here they call us refugees, migrants, foreigners. Our name is no longer ours. In their language, it has been turned into a label. And behind that label, what exists? We do. People whose hearts ache, searching for their roots in a strange land. But to them, we are only numbers, a problem, or nothing at all. And now, I will tell you the story of this migration. But listen closely, because this story may one day be your story too. A ship, or maybe a train carrying animals in cages. It didn't matter. For those inside, both were the same. A journey toward a hope that could at any moment become a disaster. When we boarded, the same question was in each of our eyes. Are they taking us there? But no one answered. Only guards with expressionless faces repeating, "Be quiet." On the road, we had no idea how long we traveled. At night, we huddled together, shivering from the cold. Children cried, and their mothers could not calm them, because they too were frightened. And at last, one morning, the doors opened. We saw sunlight for the first time, but it was not warm and friendly like in our home. It was cold and sharp, as if it wanted to test us. They took us to a camp, long lines in the yard. They gave everyone a number. They didn't even ask for our names. I was number 6743. Then the questioning began. Where are you from? Why did you come? Who is helping you? They even asked, how much could you earn in your own country? As if they wanted to reduce the pains and fears we had lived through to a single figure. And the worst of it, isolation. They separated us from one another. They called it quarantine, but that was only an excuse to divide us. Because together we were stronger, and they wanted us weak. The room was small and empty, only a bed and a stained mirror. When I looked in the mirror, I could not recognize myself. The hope in my eyes had vanished, only fear remained. And at night, the sounds of crying from above the room. I will never forget them. We all felt the same thing, lostness. But the worst feeling was not merely being alone. The worst was knowing that nearby there were people suffering the same pain, and yet we could not reach them. And so, for the first time, I learned that silence can be the loudest scream. When we left the camp, nothing turned out as we had expected. They freed us, but that freedom felt like a new prison. They forced us to live at the city's edge, in empty, faded buildings. They called it the New Life neighborhood, but there was no life there, only empty eyes and full hearts. Everything here was different, even the air, the wind too. If the wind in our home would gently blow, here it was sharp, cold and cutting, as if it whispered that we were not welcome. We went to look for work, but our diplomas, our skills, were worth nothing here. They only looked for experience, local experience. Our past meant nothing to them. A doctor became a construction worker, a teacher, a cleaner, a poet, nothing, and the worst, the language. Our words sounded harsh and foreign to their ears. Their words were heavy and incomprehensible to us. Every day, in the shop, on the bus, at work, the looks we received, those looks were not surprised but insulting, as if we were strange, unwanted beings who had come into their perfect world. Our children went to school. When they returned home, they no longer spoke in our mother tongue. New words had entered their speech. Foreigner, refugee, different. One day, my daughter asked me, "Mother, why does our name sound so strange? Why don't we have a name like the other children?" I will never forget the pain I felt at that moment. My own child ashamed of her own name, drifting away from her roots. And this is not only my story. It is the story of us all. In this new life, we lost ourselves. We are neither home nor here. We are people of nowhere. And they never understood. They only said, adapt. But adapting means denying yourself. And we were forced to deny ourselves. And then, our children, they were caught between two worlds. At home, they spoke our language. On the street, they spoke theirs. But nowhere could they fully be themselves. One day, my son came home from school, crying. He told me the teacher had said, "It isn't said like that here. Your language is wrong." He had been unable to pronounce his own name. His classmates had laughed at him. That night, I sat at the edge of his bed, watching him tremble even in sleep. To learn that your mother tongue is wrong. What does that mean for a child? It means that his existence, his identity is wrong. We tried to teach them the past, the grandfather's tales, the grandmother's songs, but they drifted further away. They began to be ashamed of their past, of their names, their kitchens, their songs. One evening, my daughter asked, "Mother, why are we different? Why can't we be like the other children?" What could I tell her? Could I say because our heroes are not in books? Could I say because our songs do not play on the radio? Could I say because our history is less interesting than theirs? Number. I held her and simply said, "Because our being different is our strength." But those words hung in the air, because I did not fully believe them myself. And the worst was that they began to forget their native language. The sentences they used at home grew shorter, words disappeared. One day, in the future, they would no longer be able to speak with their grandmothers. They would not understand their stories, advice, or love. This means blowing up the bridge between generations. And that is the greatest loss. We, the parents, came to save our children. But now we see that we are distancing them from their past, from their roots, and there is nothing we can do. And then, the day came. The day everything changed for all of us. It was no longer only words, looks, it was hands. Hands raised against us. There was an old man in our neighborhood, Ali. He was everyone's grandfather, everyone's elder. One evening, he became very ill. He could not breathe. We had to take him to the hospital immediately. At the hospital, the first medical staff we faced asked for paperwork, bureaucracy, insurance, residence permit. We tried to explain as best we could that this was urgent, but he, in a firm and cold way, shook his head and said, "Rules are rules. If you don't have documents, I can do nothing." We begged. We cried. Ali's face turned blue, yet he made no move. He simply did not look up and said, "Next." Finally, another person, not a doctor but a nurse, with a broken heart, stepped in to help. But it was too late. We lost Ali. He died on a bench in front of the hospital, in our arms, not in his homeland among his people, but in a foreign land for the sake of a paper. That day, that hour, that moment, our breath stopped, but this time not from fear, from anger, a deep, cold, stone-like anger. Whatever they might do to us, this was another level. It was exchanging a human's right to live for a piece of paper. And we, all of us standing there, witnessed that exchange. The next day, no one in our neighborhood went to work. Children did not go to school. We all gathered in the street. We said nothing. We did nothing. We simply stood there, silently. But this silence was different from before. This silence was no longer one of fear. It was a chosen silence. They came. Police, politicians, journalists. They asked, "What do you want?" We did not answer, because they already knew. They knew everything. And finally, for the first time, we saw fear in their eyes. They were afraid of the power of our silence. We were no longer refugees. We were no longer a problem. We were a unity. That silence lasted for days. We stood in the street. Nights were cold, but no one backed down. Police had surrounded us, but they could do nothing. Because we did nothing. We simply stood there, protesting with our presence. Mass silence. It is a language they could never understand. They could shout, threaten, attempt to belittle us. There was nothing they could do against silence, because silence disarmed all their weapons. They brought food. "Go back to your homes," they said. But none of us touched it. The other residents of the street, the locals, watched from a distance at first. Then, some of them began to bring water and bread from their homes. They said nothing either. They simply extended their hands and helped. For the first time, a crack formed in the barrier between them and us. We felt that inside them, there were people like us. And then, the most unexpected thing happened. One of the local journalists, a young woman, came and pointed her camera at us. She asked nothing. She simply filmed. And that night we were on the news, on the city's main channel. Silent but powerful. The next day, more people came. Locals. They stood beside us. They were silent too. It was no longer only us. We were human. Finally, the government sent representatives for talks. They looked at us with contempt. "What do you want?" they asked. The same question. This time, all at once, we answered without a single spoken word. Each of us took a piece of paper out of our pockets at the same time. On every sheet was a picture of Ali and the time of his death. Their faces went white. They said nothing. They turned and left. We had not won. We could not bring Ali back, but we had changed one thing. Ourselves. We were no longer victims. We were a people. And that was the one thing they feared. After that day, everything changed. It changed because we changed. When we walk the streets now, we no longer kept our heads down. We no longer hesitated to speak our language. When we cooked our fragrant pilaf, we opened our doors and claimed the street as our own. The locals began to approach us, at first cautiously, Then, with curiosity, they asked, "That day, why did you say nothing?" We answered, "Because our words were not enough. Action was needed." Ali's picture became the symbol of our neighborhood. Children painted him on walls. We created a small library in his name, filled with books in our language. Locals came to borrow books too. They wanted to learn, but the most beautiful thing was the change in our children. They no longer felt ashamed of their names. They began to speak about their culture at school. One day, my daughter said, "The teacher asked us to talk about our traditions." I told my grandfather's tale. Everyone was amazed. The pride I felt in that moment, I will never forget. Pride and peace. Yet this is not the end of the story, because some things have not changed. There are still those who call us foreign. There are still people like Ali who suffer. But now we know that change is within our power. We are now bridging two worlds, old and new, past and future. And it is not easy, but we are learning. And I can tell you, the greatest victory is turning hatred into love, despair into hope. It is a journey that never ends, but we are no longer alone. And so, time passed. We were no longer newcomers. We were no longer them. We simply were part of this land, while still carrying our roots with us. Now 2 languages are heard in the streets. In schools, our children learn both their own history and the history of this land. And the most beautiful thing is that they combine these 2 stories and create an entirely new one. One day my daughter told me, "Mother, I will be a writer, and I will write the story of both my worlds, because it will not resemble anyone else's story." At that moment, I understood that our struggle had won. If the next generation is proud of its past and can build its future, we have prevailed. But the story does not end, because there are still those who come by ship. There are still those who step into a new life with fearful eyes. And now we help them. We teach them that being foreign can be a source of pride. Speaking your language, cooking your food, singing your songs. These are acts of resistance. And perhaps most importantly, we have taught the locals something too. We taught them that difference is richness. We taught them that a person's story is never just a single page. Today, a park has been built in Ali's memory. At the entrance, a plaque is written in both languages. Here lives the memory of those who, like a tree with roots far away but branches in the sky, have made their home. Look, it is raining. But this rain is no longer cold. It is a warm rain that waters the soil and the roots. And we know that next spring, even more beautiful flowers will bloom from this earth. This story is not only fictional, it is a reality experienced by millions around the world. If it touched you, like, share, and stay connected. Turn on notifications and be informed of the next stories. Subscribe and join our channel for more impactful content. Leave a comment. What is your story? Share your thoughts below. Remember, every voice, every story makes the world a little more beautiful.